Hi, everyone, and welcome on today's episode of Coaching in Focus. I'm your host, Joseph Breck, and I am joined by Harriet Burrows, who is a manager at GateOne. How are you doing, Harriet?
Hi, Joe. I'm well, thanks. How are you?
Good. I'm doing really well and excited for our conversation today as well.
Me too.
So, a little bit about Harriet and the type of work that you do. So, first of all, GateOne is an award-winning digital and business transformational consultancy. And talking about awards, we're here to celebrate your very recent award as well, winning the Most Influential Woman in Executive Coaching at the annual Influential Businesswoman Awards. So first things first, congratulations, Harriet.
Thank you. I'm conscious it's a bit of a mouthful, so
I
you did
know,
that
I know.
very
I
well.
had to look at it to make sure that I get every single word right. How does it feel, winning that award?
Honestly, I am so humbled to have won the award. I got into coaching by working with some absolutely brilliant coaches, and to
Hmm.
now be considered one of those influential coaches is a real pinch myself moment for me.
Yeah.
I do this role because I love to see the difference that it makes for other people, and being recognised for that is amazing. So no, really proud, really humble. I'm really happy.
It's brilliant and it's inspirational as well. I think for individuals who are entering into coaching or people who perhaps are thinking about coaching as a career, it's great to see that there are awards like this out there. How did you find out about it? Was it a surprise? What happened?
Yeah, so I got an email basically saying you've been nominated for this award. Can you pull together a bit of a submission? So I pulled together submission, some client testimonials, etc. But to this day, I still do not know who nominated me in the first place. So thank you to whoever that person or people were. And then there was an awards panel who sort of judged the nomination. And then I found out, and yeah, it was over the moon. Surprised, but over the moon.
Well, very well deserved, very well deserved. So let's find out a little bit more about you and a little bit more about the type of work that you do in executive and leadership coaching that has led also to you winning this award. Maybe you mentioned that you work with other coaches. Tell us a bit more about your development as an executive coach. How did that come about?
Yeah, absolutely. So I sort of came into the exec coaching world by working with some executive coaches. And I was actually having some coaching myself, and we were really exploring what is my purpose and what are my values. And for me, I've got three core values, and that is influence, exposure, and making a difference. So
Hmm.
influence is all about the ability to influence people, influence projects, programs, outcomes. Exposure is about having exposure to different types of people, different ways of thinking, different organizations, and just feeling like every day I'm learning something new.
Yeah.
And making a difference is really feeling that what I do has a positive impact on people or outcomes around me. And as I was exploring this with my coach, I was sort of looking at the conversation. I was thinking, I want to do what you do. How do I do this? And it was a bit of a light bulb moment. And I started to engage and network with other coaches and really thought, this is my passion. But to be honest with you, Joe, I thought it was a sort of thing that I needed to have been a director or an executive in
Mm.
order to be taken seriously in the field. But I had some brilliant mentors that went, no, Harriet, you've got the skill set, you've got the relevant experience, just go for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, I'm not going to say it was a super easy ride. And if it's all right, I'll share a bit of a story here because I
Sure.
think
Please
it's
do.
really powerful for people as they're embarking on this journey. So I was about 3 months into my coaching qualification, and I was studying in every sort of spare minute I had. And I went to a coffee shop with my coaching book, and it was Excellence in Coaching by Jonathan Passmore.
Yeah,
And
I
I
know
was
it.
just sat there having my coffee, and this gentleman came over to me and he said, "Oh, what's that? What's that book you're reading?" And I said, "Oh, it's a coaching book I'm studying to be an executive coach." And he turned around to me and he said, "My friend's an executive coach, but he's a managing director. Why would anybody listen to you?" And in that moment,
Mm.
I had a real sort of life direction of travel, shall we say. And I
Hmm.
thought, I can either listen to this person and say, right, all those initial thoughts I had are true and I shouldn't go down this path. Or I could say, do you know what? One day, hopefully, I'll bump into you in a coffee shop again, having been an executive coach, and be able to say, actually, no, do you know what? I knew that this was the direction I wanted to go on, and I
Yeah.
knew that it was right for me. So I think to people listening, just stick with your gut. Like, there will be people that say, do you have the experience? But it's not about necessarily your experience. It's about how you approach
Yeah.
coaching and how you create that really powerful coachy experience for our
Yeah.
clients.
And thanks for sharing that, because I think that is such a powerful story and it resonates with a lot of people. Myself, I still remember when I first started coaching, I was fairly young. I was, I think, 26,
Mm-hmm.
27. I was quite a young coach as well. And this is quite some time ago. I'm a little bit older than that now. I hate to admit. But I remember people used to ask me all the time, how old are you? And at the beginning, I used to lie. And I used to say I was 35 or 36.
Okay.
And they'd look at me and they say, okay, I didn't realize. And there was a shift in me at the point where I thought I need to stop trying to pretend to be
Mm-hmm.
older
Mm-hmm.
or a different person. And I still remember the moment where I start, when people asked me, I would just say my real age, and it
Yeah.
was much more comforting.
Yeah.
And like you, I thought, well, like I'm like modestly, I'm like, I'm good at what I do. If I'm not the right coach for you, if
Yeah.
this partnership is not there, then it's not there. That's how you're
Yeah.
viewing this relationship. And there is sadly this overall kind of more broader understanding of coaching as being a more senior person giving
Mm.
advice to a more junior person,
Mm.
which is much more mentoring rather than coaching. And actually,
Exactly.
we've got all different types of coaching: parallel coaching, reverse coaching.
Yeah.
Like, and the experience can get in the way of great coaching.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because I've explored this with some of my clients when we sort
Mm,
of finished our coaching partnerships, and a few of them have said, actually, I think it's really powerful that you're not a director or you're not an executive, because I don't feel that I'm competing with you or you're comparing
yeah,
your experience to mine in the room.
yeah,
I know that you are fully here to serve me as the client, and there isn't that voice in the back of their head saying, oh, well, what did Harriet do when she did this? It is purely there, centered on them. And that's not disrespecting anyone that is,
no,
an executive or director at all. It's just different styles and approaches. And like you said, it works for some clients and it doesn't work for others. But
yeah,
that's the nature of coaching anyway.
yeah, brilliant. So were you already working in leadership at that time? How did you become part of that leadership development team and coaching team?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I started my coaching qualification, I was the head of leadership and culture for rail infrastructure in the
Hmm.
Department for Transport. And I was doing a lot of leadership coaching really without realizing. So I was doing a lot of the facilitation of their strategic board meetings, but also looking at where are the team today? Where do they
Hmm.
need to be tomorrow? And how do I help them on that journey? But I really wanted the qualification behind me to add the credibility,
Yeah.
but also to add to my sort of suite of tools. I worked on Crossrail, which is now the Elizabeth line to the Underground network in London. For anyone that doesn't know London too well, and I had a really great experience there, where I was heading up their supplier engagement, which was basically working with managing directors and CEOs of all of our key supply chains, and it just gave me great exposure to
Mm,
individual and team leadership, and especially in the infrastructure world, the importance of bringing leaders together to collaborate to actually make that meaningful difference, which
yeah.
pulls me back to my values and why it really aligned
Yeah.
to me in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah. So you've really held on to your values, sorry, to support yourself in identifying what type of work you want to do, how you want to shape your career.
Exactly, exactly.
Nice. And is that part of, I know you co-founded the Women and Friends group. Was that in the rail industry? Did that come about from an exploration of your values? Tell us a bit more.
Yeah, so probably a bit of both, to be honest. So, like I've sort of alluded to, a lot of my career has been spent in the rail industry. So, I
Mm,
started my career at TfL. I then went for a company called Harriet, which are architecture and engineering.
yeah.
Moved to Crossrail, and most recently for the Department of Transport. And within rail, only 16% of the workforce are women, and that decreases to 1% at the C suite level.
Mm,
And therefore, for me, what was really important, especially earlier on in my career, was the ability to look up and go, that could be me. And there was a real
Yeah.
shortfall of the ability
Yeah.
to do that. And as a result, there wasn't the sort of the questions, the corridor conversations around how can we make it possible to challenge this statistic and make this change. So alongside my colleague Hannah Cowig, we set up Women and Friends to basically create a safe space and a supportive network for women to come together, to have those conversations, but also to see the art of the possible. So we had people like Wendy Moulton, who was the rail minister at the time, come and speak to us about her journey. We'd hear from other inspirational women, but also go out on site, because typically women in the rail industry are in the sort of the office roles rather than actually experiencing the vast majority of the workforce that are actually out on the track, out at the depots, etc. So providing women with the opportunity to see what else is possible was also really, really powerful.
Yeah, I can hear that in your voice, even as you're telling me about it. I can even see you get excited about it.
Yeah.
And how was that received?
Really well. Honestly, the buzz that we created in that room is something that I will never forget, and is something that I want to carry with me no matter
Hmm,
what role I'm in, what company I'm in, because I
great.
think giving people the power to have a voice in a safe space, it's like coaching, isn't it? It's feeling that you're listened to, and feeling that, you can ask the silly question, you can suggest the outrageous idea, but actually no one's going to judge you. We're just going to be there to
Mm.
support you and help you on that journey.
Yeah, it's very similar to coaching, right? That idea of you creating the space and seeing what happens within that space.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
And what other leadership coaching work have you done or are you doing now? Tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, so I currently work for an organisation called GateOne, who, as you said, sort of focus on complex transformation programs. And I help to lead their leadership development and coaching service, which essentially derives from the fact that often in big transformational change programs, we focus on, the digital transformation, the program management, mergers and acquisitions, the marketing. But actually, leaders have such a disproportionate impact on the success of change programs based on how they lead themselves, they lead
Hmm.
others, and they lead the change. So at GateOne, we operate in a framework which is leading self, leading others, leading change, to really support leaders as they lead the transformation journeys. From a change perspective, we can't lead change without being influenced from our past experiences, who we are, whether we fundamentally agree with the change. Even at the leadership level, it can be done to you. It might not, be derived from your ideas, etc. So part of the role that I do at the moment is working with individuals and teams to really help them navigate that complex transformational change journey. And often with leaders, given the environment that we currently operate in, change is the constant, change is happening every day, and it's a core part of who they lead. So whether that's who and how they lead, so whether that's, individual coaching, team coaching, or really embedding myself as part of these wider programs, being that support network and that challenging critical friend to leaders to help think about how much is my past influencing how much I'm leading this change? Do I have the right toolkits to manage myself first to effectively lead others? And how do I create a collective high performing leadership team? Because, often these people are managing, 5,000 to 30,000 people. And there's a lot of people looking up for that guidance. And we
Yeah.
really strongly believe that you need to lead yourself first before you can lead others and lead organizations.
Yeah. The importance of role modeling those values and
Exactly.
attitudes that you want other people to
Exactly.
see, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So what does a typical day-to-day look like for you at work?
Yeah, so it completely depends. Like I said, we differ from one-to-one team programs, but just yesterday, if I use that example,
Hmm.
we were supporting a leadership team of around 7 individuals, and we just had a 90-minute session. And
Okay.
when I asked individuals to check into the room, they were nervous, they were overwhelmed, they felt really uncomfortable about the change. It was the first time that we'd come together as a collective leadership group.
Okay.
And what we really focused on is, within this change that you're operating in, what excites you, what worries you, and what is everything that's on your mind. And
Mm.
then over the next 90 minutes, using really simple tools like, the circle of influence, control, and concern, helping leaders to really navigate, okay, well, what can I control and influence? And how do I, as an individual, need to manage what's in my circle of concern based on my responses, what I need to manage my resilience, how I need to manage myself. So when we have people checking out, they come in with, so much in their mind about all these different complex elements of the change. And then by the time they leave the room, they say, right, these are my clear steps about what I can control. These are my networks that I can influence to help to navigate the change and steer it in the direction. And actually, do you know what? This really concerns me and it does have an emotional impact on me. But I now know the steps I need to take to manage that, to be able to be that role model that can stand up at a plenary in front of, 10,000 people and really believe in the change that I'm trying to see in the organisation.
Yeah. So there seems to be quite a lot of actual coaching work as part of your day-to-day job, is what I'm
Yeah,
hearing. Yeah.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
and is that, like you mentioned, like team coaching? Is there also one-to-one work? How's that balance? How does that work for you?
Yeah, one to one as well. So often GateOne partner with, big change programs. So there might be, 20 people supporting a big client, but actually we are part of what the leadership development and coaching team do is offer executive coaching to the executives, to the senior leadership team one to one.
Mm,
Because often navigating and leading change can be really lonely. I mean, I'm sure people on this podcast before have said it's really lonely at the top. And
yeah.
actually, when you're making some of these really challenging decisions, when you're paving the future of the organization, having that critical friend and that safe space to do that one-to-one coaching with, to sense check your ideas, to make sure that it sticks true to your values, but also the strategic context of the organization is a really powerful differentiator for how we help clients to actually deliver programs. And selfishly for me, I love coaching. So it's
Mm,
sort of the best part of what I do.
yeah. And tell us a bit about your coaching style, maybe. So
Yeah.
what sets your coaching style apart, perhaps from other coaches?
Yeah. So it's a bit of an interesting one, and I probably won't answer your question directly
It's
in the
fine.
respect that I'm going to say I don't have one style.
Yeah.
The core thing that flows throughout all of my coaching conversations is a very conversational style. And the reason for that is I really want to make sure that my clients feel in a safe, supportive environment. Yes, I will challenge my clients to get to the goals that we're trying to achieve, but actually making sure that we create this conversational approach that feels like a partnership is where I believe the best outcomes can come. I think the other thing that sort of, I guess, differentiates or tailors my style is I spend a lot of time researching the context in which executives in particular operate. Because I think specifically the exec level, you need to understand their context, their challenges, the culture of the organization that they're working with
Mm,
to make sure, these people are time poor. So they really need to maximize the benefits of coaching. So how can you ensure that you understand their context and you can bring yourself up to that level so that when you enter that partnership, there isn't that perception that they need to upskill you or educate you within their world, nor have you got that background conversation going on going, what does that mean? I'm not really sure what
yeah.
they're talking about there. It puts you on the front foot to really having a productive, meaningful conversation.
Yeah. So you kind of go into the room already speaking their language, understanding some of the wide
Exactly.
concerns, organizational pressures.
Exactly. But I think a key, and this was a massive part of my learning journey, and the real important thing that you've got to think about going into the session is understand their context, but don't have a guide for where the conversation is going to go. Because that's where, as a
Mm,
coach, we stop operating as a coach. So,
yeah.
if I was going, oh, I know this is happening in their environment, I think we should speak about that. No, that's not what we are there to do
Yeah.
as a
Yeah.
coach, but it's having that understanding to help guide them on that journey. Based on the journey that they want to go on in that session.
It's so refreshing to hear that because we do get, as a coach training provider, we train coaches and we get a lot of questions around what techniques, what models do you use, what will you train me on, and it's quite difficult to explain that nuance that there are the models and techniques, but actually holding them too close or
Mm.
just kind of thinking this is what needs to happen in the coaching session
Yeah.
actually takes you away from being the coach.
And
It's
I think there's a comfort thing early doors
hmm
when you're training to be a coach because you have all those thoughts in your head going, am I good at this? Am I serving the client? And having a model that you can stick to provides you with that confidence that it's been done before, it's been written about, I've been taught it. And actually, putting the model down can be really scary in the first couple of client scenarios that you have, because you're on your own. But actually, that's where the most powerful conversation happens, because the client, you're truly actively listening rather than thinking, when can I embed the model, or when can I ask this question that I've thought of in advance? It's a really great question.
Yeah, yeah. It's similar, I suppose, to I like sometimes thinking about coaching conversations and when they're at best, when they are natural, they flow, they're simple. It's like having a conversation. I'm not saying they're exactly the same, but it's like when you're having a conversation with a good friend, and that time you kind of think, where has the hour gone? Because you're so in the conversation, you're collaborating, working together, rather than thinking, I've got the next question to ask. I need to bring in this model, which then makes it quite clunky.
Exactly.
So thinking actually in relation to, we mentioned new coaches now. Is there any advice that you would like to share with perhaps aspiring coaches and even leaders who might want to use more coaching in their work or develop as executive coaches?
Yeah, of course. So I was reflecting on this in advance, and I thought, what would I tell myself if I was starting this journey again? And I think there's three things for me. There's learn, listen, and learn again. So learn in the first instance is sort of broken up into two parts. So yes, there's learn the models, there's learning how to be a coach, learning, as we said, the difference between coaching and mentoring, really understanding, what is coaching and what does good coaching look like. But really importantly, learn about yourself. So learn who you are, learn your values, learn your approach and what feels right to you, because that is going to be really prevalent when you start that practical coaching. And that takes me into listen. So the most important thing, I think, when you coach someone is about listening. So actively listening, and this can be verbal and non-verbal, to what they need from that session and tying it back to their goals. So listening to what they need and responding to that, but just as importantly, listening to yourself. So what is that background conversation that's going on in your mind as you're coaching a client, or what does your gut say? And try and park it in that session to make sure that it's not influencing the conversation and you're not serving yourself, but then circle back to learn. So then you learn about, why did I feel like that in that session? What drove that from my own personal experiences? And learn about yourself to make sure that you've got the right tools and approaches and use supervision to make sure that in that room you are fully present for the client. I think one of the best things about coaching is it's not static. It will always change. You will always be learning. So often, you can hear people, and I think there's an article on your website about it, that is, coaching is so much more than the grow model. You can't just learn the grow model and then be a coach. It is constant learning over time about yourself, about others, about what's happening in the field. And I think, as I said, you learn at the beginning, you get your core skills, you listen, you understand how you feel, what's happening with the client, and then you learn again. And I think that is a continuous cycle. So we can never get too comfortable as coaches that we know it all, because I'm a firm believer that just will never be the case.
Yeah, that's so nicely. I've never thought about this from that kind of lens of, learn, listen, learn again. But if I
your program, Joe.
it's very much so. As we were talking about it, I thought, well, people go onto the diploma and we learn the different ways of coaching, the ethics of coaching, how to coach. Then we do the individual feedback and mentoring, where we're developing your self-awareness. You're listening not just to the client and the sessions, but also to yourself, and we support with that. And then we learn again, because there's further mentoring along the road where you kind of go back to it and refine and develop yourself and continue that process. So I might have to steal that or borrow it. So as we're reaching the end of our podcast today, I'm excited to find out a bit more about your future as well, and what kind of goals and aspirations that you have for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's a common thread through this whole conversation. To me, what really rings true and what I really need to align to is making a difference. And
Mm,
in terms of what that looks like for coaching, where I am at the moment, I want GateOne to be, the go-to partner
mm,
for coaching through transformational change. I want to be able to influence, FTSE 100 companies to make sure that let's be honest, the impact that these companies have on society and the way in which we live is huge. So to be able to have a part in leading and helping leaders to actually lead those change programs is a massive ambition of mine, to help to be seen as that sort of partner for those organizations. The other big thing is just to keep learning. I love conversations like this. I love meeting other coaches. I like to be, and it goes back to my exposure point at the beginning, I like to be exposed to different ways of thinking,
mm.
different approaches. So in terms of what's next for Harriet, I'm really conscious, it's just the start, and to be awarded influential, executive coach is amazing. And it has just given me the springboard to go, this is really what I want to do, and this is what I want to continue doing in my career. So continue to have exposure to different people, different clients, hopefully help GateOne to be the partner for, these big transformational change programs that change the way in which we live as consumers as well. And who knows in the future, but yeah, just really keen to continue this journey and keep learning and keep speaking to people like you as well.
I'm sure you will. I'm sure you will. I mean, this is just the start. It's a celebration of the start, and
Exactly.
I very much look forward to seeing how you develop in the profession. So once again, well done, and
Thank
huge
you.
celebrations for the award, and thank you for sparing half an hour of your time to be on the podcast with me
No problem. It was
today.
great to be here. Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Harriet.